Simon! I mirrored his excitement, but mine was caused by a completely different reason. When he extended his hand, I shook it vigorously. Then I pulled him towards me, and my forehead hit his nose, breaking it. My knee hit him in the groin once and twice, knocking him to the ground as I stepped back and pulled the gun from behind my back. It was aimed at Trey, who was a little late to get his. "No need." The big man froze. I was sure this wasn't the first time someone had pointed a gun at him. I knew where he grew up and what he did with his life. Figured that he would be smart enough to realize that his best chance at the moment was to stall for time. "Drop it. To the apartment. Hold it by the trunk. I have no complaints about you." He nodded, following my instructions. The weapon skidded and bounced into place somewhere behind me. I stepped back. "Pick him up and bring him inside." Trey easily pulled his boss to his feet and helped him into the apartment while the parasite groaned in pain. "Take off your clothes. Both. Down to underwear." They hesitated. Then Simon said, "What is wrong with you? I was going to make you rich. Take off your clothes, or this conversation will become much shorter and much bloodier." They did as they were told. Simon moved slowly because he was in pain. Trey was slow because he was looking for an opportunity. "Secure your ankles," and threw him the handcuffs. His expression remained neutral as he did this. He was a professional, and he knew that he could survive only by remaining calm. With my free hand, I pointed to the kitchen chair. "Strap your boss's legs and right arm on this chair. Handcuff the left one to him. Then handcuff yourself to the radiator." I could see the wheels turning in his brain. As soon as he is immobilized, he will be completely in my power. I only have a .22 caliber pistol. So what's better? Agree with me or attack me in the hope that I'm a bad shot, that I won't hit anything vital before he takes me down. Sighing, I said, "Trey, I like you. You are the only one who treated me decently in this whole story. Do what I say, don't set me up, and I promise that no matter what happens, you will get out of here on your own and completely unharmed." He still hesitated. "It's a .22 gauge with a silencer. Do you think I went through all the difficulties of choosing the right weapon without further training? I've fired a couple of thousand suppressed rounds in the last 2 months, exactly from this." The betrayed look on Richard's face was almost worth all the trouble. He took this man, this poor black man, and gave him a job. Raised from the dirt and blah, blah, blah. I could almost hear the internal monologue, the one that could end with the words, "People just don't want to work anymore." Once both of my guests were in the right places, I took out the armored case containing the laptop that Tree had. "Code?" "No." Richards looked like a capricious child. "Trey, code?" He remained silent. "Dude, you're going to get fired no matter what. You have nothing to lose except your life. So far, you've been smart enough not to give me problems, which is more than your boss can say. Code 790235. The case opened immediately. 3, Tiny shrugged. "It's his show, Mr. Richards. Just do what he says. You must listen to him. This is the only thing that will help you survive." He grinned. "You won't shoot at us. If you do this, the cops will be here in a few minutes." I laughed, loudly and enthusiastically. I had to wipe away a tear. "Hey, Trey, you grew up in Cabrini Green, right?" Trey was clearly surprised, but, to his credit, he didn't flinch. "This area isn't that bad, but what do you think the reaction time is to a couple of shots?" "Nobody will come, sir." Richards stared at him, unconvinced. "Nonsense, even in a place like..." I fired 2 bullets, just to the side of his head, causing him to scream piercingly. The sound of the gunshot wasn't the metal mouse fart of a Hollywood movie, but the sound of a suppressed .22 firing subsonic rounds isn't much different from a door slamming. The bullets also wouldn't penetrate the thin walls of my apartment. As I said, I had plenty of time to plan. "Listen to Trey, Simon. If you survive this, it will be only because you will listen to him and do what I say." The demonstration ended. The weapon lay on the table, out of reach of the bound millionaire. He was slightly deflated. but still had that smug aura of superiority surrounding him. We need to fix this, but first I'll let him cook. I've been in this situation for a year now. It seemed fair. Trey, would you like a drink? I stood up, leaving the gun almost within Richard's reach. Far enough that he couldn't reach it, but close enough that he couldn't help but try. I laughed as I heard his handcuffs jingle as I turned my back. Do I have beer, water, or soda? Beer will be fine. I pulled out a couple of bottles and poured them into a disposable plastic cup, not intending to give him a weapon. He took it from me with an air of disapproving respect. Sitting back down opposite the seething benefactor, I took a sip. He grinned. What do you want? I shrugged and said, money, humiliation, maybe if you piss me off enough, blood. Another sip. But first I want to give you something. Richard spat. What? Enlightenment. See, I think you actually believe in your own mission. Let's figure this out. He rolled his eyes. Oh, please. I know people like you, Adam. Growing up poor, fighting for everything you have, and someone more powerful than you took it all away. This is the way of the world. But I was going to give you much more than you had before, more than you could dream of. I would give you money that would destroy her if you wanted. But you needed... I raised the gun again and pointed it at him. You ruined my life, Simon. I poked him in the forehead with the tip of the muffler to emphasize every word. You destroyed mine life. Because of your game, I no longer have anything that matters to me. His eyes widened in fear. For the first time, he truly felt how close he was to his death. I changed my mind, Adam. You are a strong person, a planner like me. You can change too. The gun lay back on the table because I was laughing so hard that I was afraid I would accidentally pull the trigger. You are an arrogant bastard. You don't... I shook my head in bewilderment. Your wife left you, but you were only together for 4 years. My shoes are older. Because of you, I lost 11 years of my life. You play this game without understanding the stakes because you've never had to pay anything but money. I leaned back in my chair. Do you know how many lives you have ruined? I'm not talking about the 8-year-old children working in your sweatshop in Jakarta, or the slaves working for your subcontractors in Yemen, and not even about those whose factories you closed and moved abroad in order to squeeze out a tiny additional profit. I'm just talking about the people whose lives you ruined with this stupid... He growled. Cheaters don't matter. They decided their own fate. They are still people. They matter, even if they made bad choices. As for their choice, we'll come back to that. But quantity, Simon. I interviewed as many of these people as I could. He opened his mouth. Yes, your non-disclosure. Nobody cares about it. You destroyed them too, and they hate you. Almost everyone chose to talk to me when they found out I was part of that unlucky league you dragged us into. It was easy enough to figure out who they were. You boasted so proudly about how often you did this that every company you bought had a woman like Erin. I just needed to understand the diagram, and it was easy enough to understand. I asked husbands and, when I could, wives, all without protocol. People love to talk, Simon. If you let them talk, they will tell you their whole life, especially if you tell them that you will make the person who hurt them pay. I usually don't smoke in my apartment, only on the fire escape, but this is my last night here, no matter what. So I decided to make an exception. Trey, do you smoke? He shook his head. I took a deep breath and exhaled right into this asshole's face. Quantity, exactly. Of course, there are many ways to measure the number of lives destroyed. I know you businessmen love your own measurements. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it, right? I'll be as nice to you as I can and give you the lowest number I can. Any guess? Without taking into account cheaters, as you so eloquently put it. So, how much? He was silent, pouted again. Come on, you can guess, you must be smart. Still silent. I put my hand on the gun and said with a threat in my voice, Guess, 30. I raised an eyebrow. Wow! Not a bad guess. His smug superiority returned for a second. However, it is stunningly wrong. 137. You have destroyed at least 137 lives, Simon. And if you consider the consequences, then thousands. Nonsense, he spat. My laughter seemed to anger him even more. For a financier, you really aren't very good with numbers. Let's count on a napkin. 20 years, on average, 4 times a year. That's 80 marriages, give or take. Almost every one of these husbands believes that you have ruined their lives, took something away from them, one of those intangible assets that you and other rich bastards like you play for. Their pride, self-respect, love, family, whatever. About half of them had children. Some had parents living with them who depended on them, and then suddenly the money to support them disappeared, eaten up by second rent, alimony, and child support. Authors. I waved my hand. Well, you get the idea. Even if we limit ourselves to only husbands and direct dependents, and I am as generous as I can be with you, then the figure will be 137. I gave them millions, gave me the opportunity to advance, to build my life on something worthwhile. Richards fell silent as I touched the gun again and spoke, my voice low and menacing. My life was worth it. My marriage was worthwhile. Even if a miracle happens, even if I can somehow forgive my wife and she can pull her head out of her ass and we get back together, there will always be that crack. The crack you created. I rubbed my face and took another drag, releasing a ring of smoke. But it's not just me. Don't get me wrong. The fact that you are tied up and on the verge of meeting your creator, it's because you hit me specifically, but... I chuckled. If you hadn't ruined so many lives, I wouldn't have been able to do this. Another sip of beer to give him time to process what was said. Do you remember Doug Sanders? His eyes said that the name was familiar, but not familiar enough. And I guess after a while they all merged together, right? He is the 14th husband you have done this to. Good guy. Previously, he was an airline pilot. Now I see you remember him a little better. It's easier to remember how useful they can be than who they are, right? So, he took the seed money you gave him and started a charter airline. She's a decent size now. Good boss. He got married again and lives a happy life. And he fucking hates you. I laughed at the expression on his face. Damn, I thought I could hold a grudge, but Doug, if it weren't for the fact that he had children, he probably would have killed you within a week of your return from the island. But he had to accept it. During the divorce, his wife cleaned him out, tried to keep the children away. Well, you know how it happens. Your whole game depends on it, doesn't it? Because people react poorly to what they learn about each other. Otherwise, it wouldn't be interesting, right? Briefly speaking, he took your money, signed a non-disclosure agreement, and bided his time. And he was one of the first people I talked to. And once he saw that we were on the same page about you, I got... a corporate sponsor, I think. Free air travel makes everything so much easier. For starters, it is much easier to collect information, make connections, find other resources. What ingratitude! I arranged his new life. Shut up! Richards opened his mouth again, and I slapped him on the back of the head. I'll let you know when I want to hear from you. He flashed his eyes at me, impotent rage burning in them. So, 137, as I already said, but the number increases significantly when all consequences are taken into account. Women, of course. Grandparents who no longer see their children. Families broken by your little game. Their relatives who were divided between a wife for the sake of money and a husband for the sake of an oath. Moms and dads living with the fact of their daughter's suicide. Siblings watching their siblings slide into alcoholism or drug addiction. The list goes on and on. Even some of those who sold their companies to you hated you for forcing them to do so. I found many allies on this list. The gunsmith, I waved my pistol. The middle managers who worked in your corporations. People, there are many of them. A security consultant who could analyze your movements and your personnel. Professional criminals who could advise on, well, a range of issues. I'm sure you and your dumb techie friends would call it donation funding, since you can only Think of everything in financial terms, about how you can make money from other people's ideas. But Aaron always said I had the soul of an angry old hippie, and I like to think of it as a grassroots political action. I opened his banking website. Do you know how easy it was to install a keyboard interceptor on your regular computer? No, probably not. I typed a few words. And of course, it was enough just to talk to people and find out how much you paid them. Once you even paid out $5 million. $5 million? Wow, that's actually generous. Of course, because of what happened to mom and dad, their teenage daughter had to be placed in a mental hospital. I think even sociopaths can feel a little guilty, right? Richard stirred in his chair, but not enough to stop, right? I looked at him, not at the screen. I asked, "Is that right? This is your cue to speak up, asshole." "Miscalculation." Laughing again, I said, "Miscalculation?" "Indeed." His expression was somewhere between sad and calculating. If it had only been the former, I might have felt a tiny pang of sympathy. But seeing him trying to play with me even now? Nope. Yes, as I already said, since that unfortunate incident, I make sure to inquire about the woman's family before extending an invitation. Having made this minor concession, he tried to gather his strength. "I was truly sorry for that girl, but her mother could have..." "Yes, about those women you invited. You said that there are such people in every company. Several, actually. Have you ever thought it's weird that almost all of them look like your ex?" He froze for a moment, then tried again to put on his disarming smile. It hadn't worked before, and especially not now that his nose was bleeding. "I have a type, Adam. I admit it. Only you don't have it." "Not really. Your escorts are nothing like your wife, and the women you choose have changed for some time after you tried dating in the early days. After Patricia Tam, the next 3 invitations were sent to slender Asian women, and tall, dark-haired women with angular features seemed to be favorites for a year after you dated that actress." He said nothing. "It was never about charity. It was always because you're a misogynist who can't handle being rejected." He exploded. "We are talking about the highest good." In the face of his fury, my voice remained emotionless. "Then why didn't you just offer counseling?" "What?" $500,000 for your little bet. It is enough that all but the most financially secure should at least consider this offer, and even if they decide to refuse it. That was your first mistake, wasn't it? The husband and wife who didn't come to your game was because neither of them was desperate enough for the money. His sullen silence meant agreement. I already knew this, but the confirmation that my information was accurate made me happy. Add here a few $100,000 more for time off for employees, travel allowances, food, and other nonsense, and you will be closer to $1 million. How many therapy sessions could you buy? You could play your little game to save one person from a bad marriage and destroy his family, or you could help dozens of families stay together. And which did you choose? It was never about the greater good, Simon. It was always connected to your sick need to punish woman who reminded you of your exes. I let him calm down a little while I drained money from his accounts. Stop looking like someone ran over your dog. I don't have enough time to liquidate all your assets. When I'm done, you'll still be filthy rich. Maybe also a little smarter. Richards burst out laughing bitterly. So much effort, and you are just a common thief. Trey winced. I pushed the laptop away. So that's what you think, Simon? That I'm doing this just to rob you? Trying to destroy your business, like you destroyed the business of the man who took yours, drive you to suicide? He hesitated for a moment, then bravado took over again. Of course, yes, and you won't get away with it. I will track you down in a few days and the money will be returned. No, they will not. The money is converted into cryptocurrency and then anonymously distributed to charities, shelters for battered women, charities that counsel low-income spouses, drug treatment clinics, and so on. People who help those you hurt. I can't undo the damage you've done, but I can help them help others. This is a greater good, Simon, than repeating the same stupid game that broke you, changing the rules slightly and labeling it charity. I took a drag from my cigarette. But that's what guys like you do, isn't it? They take an idea, change it beyond recognition to claim it as theirs, and then run with it. They write off all the costs they can. They settle cases out of court and impose non-proliferation agreements on the people affected by their greed. They disrupt the market by ignoring any licensing or safety advice, and then rely on public outcry and lawyers to get them out of any real trouble. Your useless, phony charity does nothing but add a vague sheen of respectability to your deeds. She won't fool anyone but the Simpsons Richards, but they're the only one she has to fool, right? How much do you laugh at the men you help it? Richards shouted. I did a good deed. They needed to get out of their marriage. Cheaters must be punished. Then it was my turn to pause when something unpleasant dawned on me. You really believe this, don't you? He looked away. God, you're not just a sociopath, you're also an idiot. I leaned closer. Hey, Simon, want to know something funny? Very, very funny. He spat. What? You were right about Erin. I had a year to think about it, and if you had come to me and told me that she would behave this way, I probably would have believed you. Yes, I would try to take us to a psychologist, but this most likely would not help. Of all the women you've seduced, she was exactly who you thought she was. Richard's expression was one of pure bewilderment. Then why? Why are you doing it? Looking at the screen, I realized that everything went well. I raised my weapon and pointed it at him. His eyes widened in fear. Please do not... My eyes narrowed and my face contorted with rage. Only now did I let him see how much I hated him. Because she was mine, and you took her. My finger twitched, and the door slammed on Simon Richards' life. I've never killed people before, and I hope I never do again. But at that moment, my feelings for him were no more than for a poisonous snake that I had to put down. He was a vile, dangerous creature who did not deserve to live among decent people. Did taking his life make me less human? Has this left a stain on my soul? Maybe, but it's better to risk eternal reward than to live with the knowledge that I had the opportunity to make the world a better place but didn't. Getting up, I pulled out the flash drive from the laptop, then took something from the refrigerator. Trey watched in fear as I returned to him with a syringe filled with clear liquid. Listen, guy, I won't say anything. I tried to pretend to be calm. Relax, Trey. If I wanted to kill you, I would just use a gun. This is... I gestured to the needle. Just insurance for me and an alibi for you. Regular sedative. You'll be out for a few hours and I'll... Well, you don't have to worry about that. It's better for you not to know. I handed over the flash drive. On it is a Bitcoin wallet worth about $1 million belonging to your former employer. When I'm safe, I'll contact you with the password. All you have to do is take your medicine, take a nap, and then tell the cops that you were ambushed before you even reached the door. Someone grabbed you from behind, pulled you inside, and that's the last thing you remember. The big man looked at me suspiciously. Why? I worked for him. Why would you let me go? I shrugged. As I already said, you were the only one on this island who treated me half decently. This, in itself, is not enough, but it was only the beginning. You tried to soften the blow when everyone else was trying to get at me, and you have children. That's what tips the scales. You are alive thanks to them, and you will receive money because you will no longer be hired for such work, while you must provide for it. He nodded slowly. Fine, fine. He shifted his hand as best he could, considering that he was handcuffed to the radiator. I was amused by the way he winced as the needle went inside. I don't envy the headache you'll have when you wake up, but for now, rest and dream about big women. Good night. Trey laughed quietly, dozing off. I smashed Richard's laptop with a hammer, dismantled my weapon, and left the apartment with these things and a small suitcase. He quickly reached the river, and the evidence went into the water. Another short trip to a private airfield, and I was off to a non-extradition country with a new identity. Why didn't you punish Erin? Her existence was her punishment. Richards got her right. She will never be satisfied with what she has, only more. Between this desperate, greedy existence and the fact that the companies Richards acquired were inevitably depleted and closed, she would have enough failures in the next couple of years to last a lifetime. And I'm a nameless American on a beach with enough money to avoid answering questions. After some time, I found my love. Kwang provided me with a happy marriage and 3 beautiful children. I never doubted her loyalty or affection for me. This is, of course, better than living in a constant thirst for revenge. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.